Good evening. Welcome to the Fourth Estate, Sunday, the 13th of September. A little after 10 p.m., we discussed today the NRM primary election. We also discussed the oil deal that Uganda has just signed with Total and which extends to Tanzania, where Museveni has been for the better part of today. But first, let's introduce our guests for the day. Start with you, Baker.
Good evening, our viewers. Thank you for having me. I mean, this is my second time of being here.
Yes,
I think.
second. You will always be coming back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Good to be here.
Okay, thank you. Agatha.
Good evening, viewers. Agatha Taye, an independent journalist. Raymond made a mistake. I don't work with the Independent. I am an independent journalist. I am very glad to be here.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to discuss the NRM primary election, what happened, and the violence that the party thinks was attributed to some elements within the party. But I want us to first look at the story that the Secretary General of the NRM, Kasule Lumumba, spoke with us earlier today about what came out of those elections, and then we can get back into the discussion. Let's start with that story.
Unlike the NRM parliamentary primaries, which attracted a bigger voter turnout across the country, there were far fewer voters turning up for the LC5 NRM primaries. This explains the relatively peaceful environment in the exercise. Indeed, the NRM Electoral Commission had already declared winners in most districts by 11 p.m, although some were contested. Just as it happened in the parliamentary primaries, many incumbents lost their seats, bringing in many newcomers. In Moyo district, incumbent William Wanyama retained his seat by polling 9,378 votes against his closest Daniel Boni's 3,442 votes. In Hoima, Kadri Kalunji was declared the NRM flag bearer after beating Vincent Mumuza, his closest opponent. In Lida, the NRM flag was taken by Okelo Liki with 21,745 votes, and his opponent Wilson Ogwang contested the results.
The winner.
I think NRM should stop conducting this primary election because those who are holding it, they don't know what they're doing. Eh? I have all the declarations where I've won in every villages, but here, again, when we reach at the turning center, I got different things.
In Koboko, Ashraf Mambo was declared the NRM flag bearer after scoring 18,785 votes compared to his opponent, Taban Rashid, with 11,707 votes.
And, the victory wasn't mine, it was the majority, the population that gave me the votes, based on the issue-based campaign. The campaign was mad with a lot of blackmailing and the rest, but I concentrated on the issues.
In Kabale, the town clerk of Katuna, Nelson Shangabshaija, won the district chairperson, Patrick Kahire, to secure the NRM district party flag. In some areas like Bukedia, the frustration of losing primaries made some candidates to announce their intention to run as independents in the coming elections.
For declare K. William Wilberforce, who has scored the highest number of votes.
For honestly speaking, this is the worst. And I want to say, as a chairman, I am not going to contest on these results to say maybe I am going to petition. I have decided to quit the party. I go and stand as an independent and let the people decide by themselves in the national election. I'm going to leave with the party business.
180.
In Imbale, Vincent Magombe emerged the winner, but his opponent Abdu Magola accused the NRM registrars of changing results.
Actually, they are paid money. They are paid money. This one, I repeat, they are paid money to do the forgeries. All these things they do in connivance. They knew what I've got. They communicated this way again and altered the what? The other sub-county of Toto, and they brought in 15,000.
In a related follow-up, the State Minister for Economic Monitoring, Morika Mukama, has appealed to the President to call Tango Do It order. This comes after the NRM Electoral Commission ruled that she had lost the race for Kazo District Woman Member Parliament.
That's not the will of the people of Kazo. I don't think they are settled. They're not. They're not. They are up in arms. And they're not up in arms against me. They are up in arms against the party and the party chairman himself for allowing Tanga to take their will. So it is not a small matter. It's a very serious matter. We have to handle it.
The declaration of election results had been suspended for a period of 1 week after elections were marred by counter-accusations of electoral violence, voter bribery and rigging, among others.
Thank you so much, Chimuli, for that story. That story gives us a brief overview of what happened during the primary race, both for LC5 and the members of parliament. And I wanted us to start the discussion with you, Becca, to start with. The NRM had primary elections in 2011, 2010 in fact, which they blamed, being messy, they blamed it on the Secretary General then, Amama Mbabazi, who they said, you know, he organized a shambolic election. The Secretary General then left, and we had another messy election in 2015, which produced the independents that almost overwhelmed the NRM in Parliament. And now the NRM still has another messy election. Is it a messy election to start with, or it's just that the press has covered it that way?
You are using the wrong word.
I'm using the wrong word.
Worse than that. Bloody.
It's bloody.
Tragic. Something worse.
But you see, always the motivation for... we always be the same. For example, the issues that motivated violence in 2005, leading to 2006, 2010, 2015, are always the same. Therefore, they will always be messy. It doesn't matter who is in charge. Even if it is Kasrel Mumba, even if it is Ambabazi, even if it is Tango Doi, it is Mishemeza, name it. It will always be the same because the motivation is always the same. You see, I covered those elections, at least here in Kampala. And the problem is not necessarily the NRM. The problem is the nature of the politics. We have people look at politics now as a do-or-die thing. So, and a little bit away from the NRM. For example, I'll take an example of Western Uganda, whereby if you are an NRM card bearer, if you have got the card for NRM, to hold the NRM card, it means that chances are very high that you will sail through in the national election. Therefore, this is the actual election. So what you see there is because people are fighting the actual election. Their survival politically is on the line. Therefore, they will do everything in order to go through. And you see, the problem, unlike the national election, whereby it's a bit, yeah, it has problems also, but at least it is more organized. Here, a candidate conniving with the officials would blatantly change results without regard for anything. Let me give you an example. This election of Friday this week, I was in Lubaga division. The whole of Lubaga had two candidates who are contesting for the Lord Mayorship. One got 8,131 votes. The other got 2,700 something votes. Ragad is the one who got the 800. Altogether, it was about 11,000 votes. Now, the whole of Lubaga. Now, in one particular 3 villages, three villages in the national, they call them parishes. That is Naja, 4 actually, Naja 1, Naja 2, Kabawa and Mutundwe. 4 villages, and Lubaga has about 113 villages. So in 3 villages, in 4 villages, there is a councillor who got 6,000 votes, and the other one, they were 2, the other one got 3,000 votes. That brings to 9,000 votes. Now we ask yourself, how can the whole of Lubaga with 100 plus villages bring 11,000 voters? And 4 villages bring 9,000 voters. So practically it is impossible. So what happened?
It could be they had mobilized.
It can't happen. It cannot happen that 4 villages can bring 9,000, more than half of the whole electorate of Lubaga division. It can't happen.
I wanted to bring in Agatha on this.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is, but if you are the returning officer and you have no shame whatsoever that in 4 villages you can stand there and declare that somebody has got 9,000, it can't happen. So the other one who was defeated, there was chaos, and they never declared the rest of the results because they nearly reached the returning officer. Because it can't happen. I was at polling stations where there are only 5 voters. So how can in 4 villages get 9,000 voters? It can't happen. So, but someone thinks because there is no there is no, maybe the repercussions are not as severe as maybe changing an election, a national election. Therefore, he will continue doing it blatantly and do what he wants to do because their survival is on the line. Somebody thinks that if they are not in politics, that's the end of life. You see, so they will continue doing that for as long as politics is, they continue looking at politics as means of survival.
It's a matter of life and death. Agatha, I wanted to bring you in on this. The election is really about numbers. Who won boils down to who had the most voters. When the press was covering this election, very few articles, even on the TVs, even on online sites, very few discussed the numbers. The press discussed personalities and said, you know, this personality is losing, this personality is winning. But there's very little to show for the numbers, for how much they're losing by, or even no one has given us an overview. Was there a high voter turnout, a low voter turnout? And there was no register to even start with. Do you think that it was fair for the press to cover the NRM primaries the way they did?
I think it must be because the numbers in this case, unlike in other elections, numbers in this country are not the ones that determine the winner. Because we've seen it in this election, where I come from in Shema. I think Professor Kamuntu was behind even by the time they closed. But he was announced as the winner. We saw that in Nyabushozi, where Colonel Fred Mwisije was against Ambassador Kajwenje. And I was going to say that it makes it frustrating to cover things like this in this country. Like, you can't come in, election cycle in, election cycle out, and it's the same thing. As looking at the previous NRM primaries, like you pointed out, it has been the same thing. I don't know why we even cover it as if it's a new thing. People dying, people being, yeah. And it boils down to what Becca said. And the motivation for that, the election being a do or die issue. That, yeah, at the end of the day, we are not, and that's what I think as journalists we should cover. Why do we have an election like this? I was reading through stories I did in 2015, and I did an article in The Independent titled, "Why Were NRM Primaries Bloody?" So it was more or less the same thing as now. And the motivation that we should talk about, there are many in this country. You have many causes of elections like that. You have incompetence, because really, Tango Doye has been at the Electoral Commission of the NRM for all these years, but still you don't have an organized voters register, you don't have. But there's also sheer impunity of seeing people who do whatever they want to do because they know they won't be maybe punished for it. I am glad we have one of them being at least a semblance of being punished. I don't know how far it will go with the former Deputy Attorney General. But also you have President Museveni's interference. And most times with very knee-jerk responses. So you have people complaining they are not in the voters register, and he immediately says, let everyone vote. Even people who are not in the voters register, and that, I sat and wondered, how does he think that will solve the problem? And people that voted, most of whom that I know in this city who are not NRM, told me they would call a name, and no one cares to see if whether the person that has entered to vote that line is the holder of the name. No one is asking for their IDs, nothing. So you cannot have an election like that. I don't know if you guys read Kadinaki's recent column. It was talking about basically that, President Museveni wanting to do everything. And he can only do so much. But the main one that I think we should discuss as journalists and focus on is the motivation he talks about, and it's the money factor. That for them, an election has become the most lucrative investment. People don't mind putting in 500 million, 1 billion, because they know they will recoup it in Parliament within a year. So if you are a government, journalists should cover that, and we should push for something changing. If you're a government and you see you don't deal with the cause, and we keep regurgitating the symptoms and the effects. If you allow me, I can go through the emoluments of MPs for viewers to understand. We have MPs that some earn 80 million per month, I say some because it varies from how much they give them. Yeah, so you have MPs who get fuel to go to their villages 3 times a month. And that's a presumption, because there's no requirement that you must go and show that you have gone. I can receive it and I don't go. And the fuel, a litre of fuel in Parliament is counted at 6,200. Never mind
almost
that it is at 4,000. It has never been beyond that. So you have people like the UPDF representatives and National Youth representatives that get about 80 million in fuel, 80 per month. And like I said, no one follows up to see if they have actually gone to their constituencies or not. So someone pockets that. They have per diem, inland per diem, 400,000 per month for an MP. Abroad, I think it's $720. And for the speaker, it's way over $1,000 per night. They have committee sitting allowances of 50,000 per MP. Then they have free lunch. They never buy lunch. The Parliament pays. So then they have their salary of 11.7 million shillings, and that's the only thing taxed. So all these other benefits are not. They have housing allowances, many. You have a Parliament that where Uganda thinks, the government thinks that an MP should earn about 80 million per month, and you have doctors that strike all the time. So why wouldn't everyone fight to go there? Why wouldn't they kill to go there? So if you disincentivize that, put it at 5 million, let it be a normal thing, and people don't go there as a career and business thing. So they know I will put in 500 million or $1 billion, kill whoever comes my way because I have to defend this investment, and go there and recoup it in 2 years, and I have...
Yeah, we are lucky both of you are parliamentary reporters. The process of emoluments for Parliament is really up to Parliament again. Is there a reform that can be pushed through Parliament?
Yes,
Disincentivize, because I know in the last Parliament, one of the first motions tabled by Semu Junganda was to disincentivize the emoluments. And he was defeated very roundly. I don't think he scored more than 30 votes on that reform. Can MPs reform their own financial emoluments within Parliament, or it has to come from elsewhere?
Where to come from where? Because even if it comes from somewhere,
it can be a democracy like there was in the primaries.
It will ultimately end up in the same Parliament, because Parliament in Uganda is the only institution in Uganda that has the mandate of making any laws that are any laws in this country. Therefore, it will certainly end there. But you see, get an example. Say there come a time and you say, I think we should reduce on the numbers, let alone the money, and say the constituencies are too much, let's reduce them. Tell me who will. There is a saying, who will build the car? Tell me one MP who will stand on the floor and say that we should reduce the numbers.
If I come in at that point, it will still be that short-mindedness, that like not seeing beyond that term. Because the MPs know very well, you know the attrition rate in this country, in that Parliament.
67%.
Exactly. So when you are there, do not plan as if you will be in that Parliament forever. And I agree, it was a mistake in the first place to have Parliament determine its emoluments. But those that are there, if they can understand that this is what actually is causing them all these problems, and they say, let's sit and be fair to ourselves and this country, they could do that. If that is not done, then Law Reform Commission, the executive, of course the executive is not interested, but I'm saying, if we have to grab the bull by the horns, we cannot keep lamenting election this, election that, when we know that this is the issue and people are going to die. You know, people die conveniently just on the eve of election. There's a guy that died, was it Ganga? And this is not the first one. In Nyabushozi last election, another opponent died. We all know the supporters, the voters that just die. If we are interested in resolving this issue, I think those are things we need to look into.
Who is interested?
The other thing about representation, and before Parliament closed, I remember there was a debate on representation because of the split in constituencies. And Muhammad Nsedeko raised the point of, I preside over a constituency of 1 million people, and there's only 4 MPs, I think, in Kampala. And he was saying, there is a constituency in
Kampala
Mitoma.
has, is it 8?
Yes.
Every
Yes.
division has
Yeah.
2.
But there's a constituency in Mitoma where you have less than 12,000 people, which now has almost 5 MPs who are representing it. And you're saying
Because
there's
they
an
have-
unfairness. If you want to reduce the number of MPs, we should start to look at constituencies like that.
Because they have to
But that
create
is also
constituencies
defeatist, because
for
no
some
one will
people.
allow for their constituency to be taken away.
When the law talks about one of the criteria for choosing representation is the number of people. I don't remember properly. Is it 50,000? But you
Yes,
see, when
yes.
you go by that, for example, let me take, for me, I come from Kira municipality. Kira municipality, you have about 300 and something people there. You go in a district like Queen, it has 4,000. But you'll find Queen has about 3 MPs. And Kira municipality has one member of parliament. You go in Busiro East, it is so huge. I think it has also 1 million people, but it has 1 MP. Both in number of people and in geographical, the geography, how big it is. You will find areas, for example, you go to Selukunjiri municipality, or even in Tungamo municipality. You go to, there is my friend in Vujiri municipality. Look at Vujiri municipality, where the constituency starts from. You can call somebody at the end of the constituency and they hear you. But the problem with, look, when this thing was in parliament the other day, they had brought that amendment. I mean, they had created, they had brought 15, I don't remember the number properly. And then they said you cannot. And they took it back and again cut more, and they brought, is it 50 now? So in the next parliament, we'll have about 520 members.
527.
But
527.
527. So at the end of the day, the problem was the people who created the law thought that maybe the people who will be in parliament will be as understanding as themselves. But unfortunately, as time goes on, the people who are motivated, because let me give you an example. How many decent people now can subject themselves to an election in Uganda? How many, for example, you have an MD of NTV Uganda and say, I think I should go back in my area and stand? Very few of them, because politics has become a do-or-die matter for them. Now the only people who can are those ones who have stolen a lot of money and have nothing to do with it. Those ones who literally no one can employ them, so they look at politics as the only way they unlaw of getting a job. So those ones, they will do everything on us, but you come to parliament where they come. Go and look at the Hansard. How many people say anything? How many have my MP in Kira municipality? Ibrahim Samujunganda. How many MPs are like Samujunganda? When you go in the whole country, everybody knows about him because he has an impact. Someone will tell you, people in the village will tell you, what has he done for us? No, some MPs, somebody will say, what has that MP done for us? And what is the role of an MP? Because it doesn't go for burial, it does not.
It doesn't pay coffin fees.
I'm telling you, those ones, and those ones who do actual registration, those are, that one. You will find them, many of them are unpopular in places where they come from. But who do they want? People who can bury, people who can, and in parliament, zero. You look at the Hansard, we have now what, 450 something members? You'll find for a full month, it is about 50 people having any contribution in that house. So you ask yourself, what is the role of other MPs? They are MPs, I will not mention them, but they are going to leave this term. For
Without
example,
saying anything.
Without saying anything,
Yes,
you
yes,
look at the MP for Buikwe, the woman member of parliament, Judith Babidi. She has never said a single word on the floor. So you ask, and she will go back to the village and tell the villagers, Banange, send me back to parliament. You ask yourself, to do what in the parliament? So I think Museveni is very guilty on this one. He has, and every day he talks about it, but he's very guilty. He has allowed money to permeate through our politics. So for you to be elected, you have to have money. For you so when they come in parliament, Haggart has talked about how the emoluments, but that is the list they earn. Those MPs are trading resolutions, they are trading motions, they are trading everything.
Reports, yes.
They are trading reports, they are trading. You go and appear in a committee, you know, these ones are accountability committees. If there is a person you talk to who you'll have to give a card, you go, you have this budget committee, all of them, what they are in deals. So at the end of the day, you find someone, yes, that is the official money, but the money that they get through
Off
other
the
means,
books,
yes, for them being in parliament is actually more than what they get officially. So they will do everything on earth in order for them to return to parliament.
I want us to first take a very short break, and when we return, we'll discuss whether the democracy that we want and the democracy we have are the same, and whether the press has a role to play in steering this country from the democracy that we have today and the one that we want. But let's first take a very short break and we return. Thank you so much for coming back to the Fourth Estate. We've been just having the discussion on the MPs and their emoluments and how the NRM primaries have triggered this debate once again. And one of the things that the press has to do is to hold power to account. And we all seem to agree here that Parliament has this enormous power to allocate itself resources. And it's the role of the press, which has the voices of the people day to day, to hold Parliament to account. How is the press playing this role in these NRM primaries? Or how should it play the role in these primaries? Starting with you, Agatha.
Yeah, you know what we call impact, impact of the stories we write. And I wouldn't blame the press. Maybe there's some where we don't write the right stories, but even when we have, nothing has been done about that story. If we have informed even the powers that be that something is going on, nothing has been done. And it's not just with the press. It's just that this country, they do not respect other institutions' work to implement it. In 2015, I wrote an article about the Auditor General's reports. And it was triggered by one day we were in the press gallery in Parliament, and NSSF was on the spotlight. And there was a conversation in front of me with guys from NSSF. And they're saying, it will end here. That's what they were saying, because those reports just gather dust and nothing ever happens. So if the government can ignore the reports of the Auditor General that our constitution I provided for, and you know what they're supposed to do, like, who are we, journalists? We just write, do our job and write and go. And all the things we talk about, it's not that they don't know them. The reason President Museveni, for example, I had said the executive should intervene and other arms of government, but we all know that the president cuts deals with the MPs. We have seen recently how, if, like now, like you said, you are going to be in trouble with that parliament. I know it very well, because they don't want to be asked for you, why have you done this? Remember the story of the 10 billion during when COVID had just started? Yes. And how the Speaker of Parliament, like, shamelessly said, hey, what about them? How about the 59 billion they took to buy food and bought bad food? Yes. And you ask yourself, this is a Speaker of Parliament. You know that the executive is buying bad food and expired milk, and you keep quiet until they ask about what you're doing for you to say, what about them? Like that whataboutism of, yeah, we are not doing bad, they are doing the same thing. So the things, they know them. But this country has for a long time been about everyone's survival. President Museveni wants to be tread careful with Parliament, because if he brings the age limit clause, they will support, but and vice versa.
Yes, that's the hard line of politics. You have to make concessions, you have to make calculated demands, and this is where I think that I'm asking the question on what's the role of the press, because the press has been reluctant when the president is cutting these deals with members of parliament.
Reluctant how? Yes, we have written about
OTT,
them.
When they went into the caucus for OTT, he got the money. For the age limit, he got the money. For the counties, he got the money. He promised money.
Our story is binding. Our articles that we run binding on the executive.
I'm just wondering, like, what has the press missed in their stories?
I think the press in another country, you can have that impact, that you have a government that has a sense of shame, that says now that they know what is going on, or now that this has been brought to our attention, how will we look if we don't act on it? But in a government like ours, I can't say I write a story and it automatically, like, enforces something. It's not a binding story, but you're just writing it to inform those that have power to change things and to inform the citizens so that they hold their, and nothing. No one does either. Not to the government, not to the people. So what can we do?
But you write for an investigative paper, The Observer. What must happen? What must happen? The Observer doesn't fear. It doesn't have the trade-offs that many of the media houses uptown make. The Observer has on many occasions hit out, by and large, and its own journalists have actually been expelled from Parliament for critiquing the roles and powers of Parliament. What's lacking in the stories that are being written to inspire this population to demand a level of accountability for Parliament?
Agatha here has just said that with a government that is devoid of shame, it doesn't matter what you do. We write the story and we've written them actually. But it will be an inconvenience for 2 days, for 2 weeks. You know, someone, you know, an inconvenience where you focus on him and what, but he can't deal with it, he can't stay with it because there is no impact.
And they know it will pass.
You see, and even the people themselves, because we don't write in vacuum, we write for the people. Let me give you an example. When you write a story that 20 billion goes missing in Parliament or what have you, and you send out the newspaper on the street, and then write another story of how a musician is conflicting with another somewhere, you will have more returns on a musician than on a story of corruption. Because you see, people have come to accept that that's the way of life of Uganda.
Normal.
It has become normal. Someone was telling me at the peak of the northern Uganda insurgency, and he splashed photos of how Konya has cut off lips of people. No, most of the papers would return because the war remained there for so long that killing started becoming normal. Therefore, even corruption in Uganda is the way things are done. It's the way things happen in Uganda, not the way they fail in Uganda. And our people are primarily responsible for that. Let me give you an example. And this is on record. Someone might accuse me of doing anything, but it's on record. President Yoweri Museveni said that those guys were just from URA for being corrupt. In his words, and I know NTV carried that story, that those guys were corrupt, that's why they thought they are helping the country and we just them. The people of shame, the person the president had said are corrupt, and that's why they were dismissed from URA. The people of Shema said, you are our representative, go and represent us. So how, if somebody like that comes to Parliament and starts cutting deals, yes, and he starts cutting deals, what are you going to tell us? You the people of Shema, what are you going to tell Ugandans? That the guy is doing something wrong? But you knew from the word go when you were electing him. When Sebagala went and was arrested for forgery. He came here, he became a hero, and he became road mayor, I mean the mayor of Kampala. And in our villages, if you work in government and you drive an old car, say this one is working in the government for all this time, but look at the guy is driving, he has no house. Even the community itself, they normally say that leaders always resemble the communities where they come from. So it doesn't matter what we write. And we write, I can assure you, go and review those newspapers. For example, you can't spend a week without reading a story that tries to hold somebody to account. But where do they end? Because they mean nothing. For as long as you are in good books with the people who matter, it doesn't matter what you do.
I want us to cap the conversation on NRM primaries, but I just want to correct you on the fact so that we avoid a defamation suit.
Yes.
Dixon Kateshumba, who ran in Shema, resigned from URA. So I'm not sure the one the president was referring to was Dixon's Kateshumba. Just for the avoidance of a defamation suit, we have to state the fact. But Agatha, let's just end this conversation so we can move over to the oil conversation. The NRM has had a chance to self-correct using the primaries. And it doesn't look like the party has self-corrected. It doesn't look like the inefficiencies that they carried from the previous primaries have gone away. Are we very likely going to see more independents come into Parliament because of this process within which the primaries were conducted?
I think President Museveni, like I said, he likes cutting deals. He normally cuts deals with them. That's how Emmanuel Dombo is at the party headquarters, for example. But like there are too many for you to accommodate all of them or to place them somewhere. So some will still come as independents. And they are right. Like you are in a constituency where you see that I had voters, why do you go with a sham result of the NRM? I think that's what will happen. I wanted to tell you a story briefly of one of the ministers that didn't stand. Were in his office, and there was a group of people waiting for him before the elections, before even nominations for NRM. And he dreaded meeting them and going to the village. Said, this election thing, I have failed to understand the economics of it, the politics. That is, he was talking about the politics. I asked him, so why do you guys keep coming back? He said it is like opium. And the opium is what we talked about. The reason you see the incumbent stakes being higher, those that have fought are incumbents, those have grabbed guns to shoot are incumbents, is because they have gotten comfortable. They have gotten used to those many benefits that they don't earn. We should not even use the word how much MPs earn. Like, earning is something you have deservedly got. You cannot get 80 million for going there and some not saying anything, like Bate said. But they are used to benefits like that, and that's why that keeps happening. So if I am in Kano Messages constituency, for example, and I am Kajwenji, so I know I was the one people that voted for because I saw the results, and he's declared. I wouldn't. I would also stand as an independent because that would be unfair to. Yes.
Okay. I want us to spend the last 9 minutes of the show discussing the oil. Okay, 1 minute, yeah. but because we need to switch
I disagree fundamentally with the idea of an independent. You see, one of the things the things I've in recent times argued with Prime 7 with, I've disagreed with him with so many, was when he mooted the idea of bringing an amendment that when you contest in party primaries, you don't come as an independent. These NRM people who lose know very well that they know the standards of the election, that they are going to steal from you, that if you don't have the gun, if you don't have the money, you don't go through. And they go ahead and subject themselves to those elections.
We can say the same about the national election.
No, let me look at this one. When you subject yourself to that election, be ready to accept the outcome of that election. Because you knew exactly, we've given examples that they have been like that in the past.
But for fair contest, in the democracy, you should allow people to choose.
No.
Where they run.
When you choose to go and contest in a party primary, you must not come as an independent because you knew what kind of election you were subjecting yourself to. When you go and lose there, you swallow a humble pit and come back next time. Not during the time you have, because after all...
We can say the same about the national election. Why do we keep going there to vote? Why do people like Dr. Besije or others keep going there? Because at the end of the day, the credibility of elections in this country, whether in NRM or national, and Becca, when he was starting, said the national one is a bit organized, but really, where?
When but we go there, NRM.
We go there and vote. The candidates go there and stand because you want to participate. Although you know that it's not a fair system, you cannot just sit and fold your hands and watch.
You have an option. You wait for the national election and come as an independent. Yes, don't go into party primaries.
Becca, we will discuss this in the next one, but let's switch gears and discuss oil. And Puyana, the Total CEO and chairman, was in the country on Thursday and Friday discussing with President Yoweri Museveni the final marks of what the pipeline should look like. And Museveni made an assurance that he would travel to Tanzania to be able to seal what that pipeline would look like. I want us first play the story of what came out of those conversations and discussions that they had and what analysts think that meeting has cost Uganda. And then we can have we can conclude with a discussion on oil. So I'll ask my producer to first play for us that story.
Mid last year, Tanzania's President John Pombe Magufuli advised President Museveni to forego short-term gains in taxing oil companies and focus on the big picture of setting up a pipeline. Magufuli, who was hosting President Museveni at the Uganda-Tanzania Business Forum in Dar es Salaam, insisted that the long tax issues were delaying the oil project.
We are supposed to move. Katika biashara, huwezi ukapata super profit. It's sharing and giving. You have to lose a retro so that you gain more.
In response, Museveni promised to solve the controversy around the oil pipeline project.
But we shall get in touch with the oil companies and resolve these small residual issues.
Well, today, the residual issues appear to have been solved with the signing of the host agreement between Uganda and French oil giant Total EP. Observers say this will pave way for the final investment decision on the production of Uganda's oil. The project, which is expected to cost a consortium of $4 billion, will run from Buseruka in Hoima district and end up in Bukoba. But where has there been a delay in this project for over 12 years?
Oil companies have also treated cautiously because they knew we are going to spend a lot of money. This is shareholder money, and a lot of it is going to be borrowed from the bankers. And the bankers are the most risk-averse people. A banker will only put money in a project where it's going to earn a return, or it's guaranteed that it will be able to get back its money. And if it's not going to be able to get its money, it will always put their conditions. So that is why the second tax dispute we had involved Talo Oil. Now, when Talo Oil acquired the entire stake of Heritage Oil, that meant that it held 100% interests in Uganda's oil. But as a means of mitigating the risk and also making sure that other players come on board so that they can jointly raise the enormous resources required to develop the sector, Talo Oil decided to sell off stake to Total and Sinok. That is how Total and Sinok came on board. Now, approval of that transaction took a bit of time because the government gave to Talo Oil a condition that we will only approve this transaction if you have paid the taxes. Before you pay the taxes, forget about the deal closing.
Now that the deal has been struck, what lies ahead for the oil and gas sector in Uganda?
We did some simulation, and that simulation indicated that if Uganda brought in about 10,000 expatriates, and I think we took a very conservative number, every month Uganda would be able to collect about $100 million in taxes, pay as you earn alone, which in a year would probably translate to about 1.2 billion. That is really significant, and this is money that you're actually earning even before crude oil production commences. But then there's also the...
After signing the agreement yesterday, President Museveni promised that the profits will be used to develop infrastructure and ICT. It still remains to be seen when the actual works will start. Raymond Tamale, NTV Weekend Edition.
So much, Raymond Tamale, for that story. I want us in the final segment to discuss this. The deal that's just been struck at State House between Puyane and Museveni. Museveni has banked a lot of this country's future on that oil. And he's slowly and steadily snaked his way to a decision on whether the final investment decision comes or not. He's held back the Total, he's held back Sinok, based off of mere small agreements on capital gains, small agreements on land acquisitions. You guys have covered the oil sector. Do you think that this small breakthrough on the pipeline finally means that oil will flow? I know that, Agatha, you've written the story of oil flowing from 2013. It's 2020.
2009.
Will oil flow? Will oil finally flow?
2009. And me, I moved on from that oil, Raymond. I think even actually many Ugandans moved on. But for us to be really celebrating now, if there are people celebrating, I don't know. But at the end of the day, you look at the delays we've had, and have they been resolved by that agreement? No. We have an issue in this country, a very contentious issue of land acquisition. Now, you're talking about land acquisition in over 8 districts. And you think it's going to happen and it moves in the time. Because, you know, President Magufuli had complained about the slow pace of Uganda before. Because for him, the other side, he has no problem with acquiring land. Land is public. Here we have a problem, which is not a problem really, that the land is in the hands of the citizens, but also that this country's corruption and incompetence in everything also comes into play there. You will have disagreements on rates. You'll have a government that does not want to reconcile that. They only pay high rates if it's someone from government or from those offices. But if it's an ordinary Ugandan, they want to give them 1 million per acre of land. Then you have the refinery that has never taken off. People of Seruka were displaced in 2010, 2011, of Kabale. Yes. But there's no refinery. And we've had a contractor announced in 2015, that was RT Global, and then you had another one announced in 2018, and up to now there's nothing that has happened. You have very many other infrastructures that are needed for that oil to be in place, like CPF. You need all these pipelines also to connect, and all that. I don't think it's something the Ugandan government can pull off in the shortest possible time. I've had now being revised revised the date to 3 years to come. But yeah, you will wait for, and as if you're waiting for Jesus.
Look, is there white smoke in, is the white smoke for oil finally coming? I saw the revised estimate, however, being that the second quarter of 2021, some activity will have started in the oil fields. Is that realistic?
I'm not sure, because like Agatha said that the dates keep on shifting, but the money is actually happening, and there are those ones who have already started helping themselves with the money, although the oil itself has not come. But like she says, let's keep the hope. But
no, not me. I didn't.
I lost hope in 2010
because there are so many things that impede things to move in this country, and on top of that is what we've been discussing: the corruption in this country. And Agatha here has been saying about, say, the system of land tenure, the land ownership in Uganda. There was a reason why those wise men in 1994, 95 put the land in the hands of the people. Because if now people in government are taking the land when there is a law, when we have all these land problems, even when there is a law that protects people with their land, what about a situation whereby the land is owned by the government? So there are legitimate issues. There was when in this East African crude oil pipeline project, I attended some of the environment assessment. Is it dissemination? What is it called? Where they go and meet the people and tell them what is in the environment assessment. Yeah. But the problems are the same from where it starts from Hoima up to where it ends in Rakai. You know, land acquisition, they took our land, they didn't pay, rich people came here and took over the land. The problems are the same. And you ask yourself, does this government have the muscle? Does it have the muscle, yes, and the will to see these things through? We'll keep on pushing, and we don't know. Maybe by the time we have made a breakthrough, oil will not be an issue in the world anymore. But there are those who are optimistic, and maybe I want to be part of those who are optimistic. But the ground, I think, is not. We have not leveled it to such an extent that people should think that even the 3 years they have said in 2023 they will be seeing fast oil, because so much needs to be done, and so little has been done in actual. Because even if, for example, Tala accepts to this pipeline, I'm not sure they have finalized who is going to bring the money in this project. So there is a lot really.
Or who is going to construct?
Or who is going to construct? There is a lot that needs to be done in this thing for people to become optimistic. I'm not sure. President Seven keeps on telling us our oil is pledging a lot of, and unfortunately for Uganda is that we are even taking a lot of credit based on the oil money. We are taking a lot of money to construct roads, construct so many things based on the oil money. Maybe by the time the oil actually starts to flow, there will be little left for Uganda. We will have spent it already, because we are mortgaging it to get loans to construct all these roads. You see, not only in the oil region, but elsewhere. That's what we are putting in as Corato. I mean, is it called what? Corato?
Yes.
So at the end of the day, we'll end up, when we have depleted the oil before actually the actual oil.
Agatha, you concluding.
Yes,
you had something
yes.
to conclude.
I wanted to talk about President Museveni's remarks when they were signing this agreement of saying we took our time so that everything is in order, so that we don't have problems. And I want us to ask these questions. Does it necessarily guarantee that we'll come out with a good deal just because it has taken us 20 years to produce this oil? And I think this oil issue, we should have just honest conversations about it. The secrecy that surrounds it does not help matters, because you know that, like, now we don't know why does it take that long. How is taking long going to help us? And the people who have produced it in a short period of time, like Ghana, what has happened that we think we have cured? What have we put in place to cure that? There's a senior officer that used to work in the oil sector and was telling me that he could understand the delay up to 2012. But from 2012, when we had all these laws in place, up to now, this is 8 years. What is going on? And the delays are over those things, the incompetences and corruption we're talking about, of you have failed to agree on who takes up a project like the refinery, you have failed to agree with the oil companies on this and that. And as we speak, even the refiner and the oil company, initially it was supposed to be an East African partner states project. But with all that is happening, I doubt that many East African
Kenya has been
states
edged out, and they've even complained
of
already
course,
about
of
the
course,
fact
even
that
Rwanda,
they're
even,
not-
yeah. So now you wonder, where is that money going to come from? And that's what Becca is talking about. And at the end of that day, is it worth it? Can we ask those questions of how much are we putting in vis-a-vis how much we expect? How much benefit are we expecting vis-a-vis the dangers? Because we are tampering with many other sectors that are equally important, tourism, for example. So that risk assessment, have we looked at it? Have we, for example, by now, leave alone the money Baker is talking about that we are borrowing, what about the costs that are going to be recovered by oil companies? The last time I checked, it must have been already $20 billion. Now I don't know. So all those things need to be looked at, and we weigh and say, and we move on from the oil like I did and do other things.
Thank you so much, Aga. Thank you so much, Becca, for discussing for us two of the biggest stories that came out of this week.
But
the NRM primaries and the oil deal.
The highlight in this, a few weeks ago, Uganda joined the EITI,
transparency.
Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, where government is obliged to make public these things it does. Maybe it will solve the transparency issue that has dogged the
even if you are transparent, procurement processes in Uganda take almost 4 to 5 months to just move from one office into another. So I'd just say thank you so much for discussing for us the two biggest stories, the NRM primaries, which continues, of course, into the next week. NRM is going to be trying and resolve the conflicts that are happening within the party. Currently, about 316 petitions have been lodged with the NRM about the electoral process. So we'll see how those are being resolved. The oil story, of course, continues. Museveni will be back from Tanzania later tomorrow morning, and we'll be able to continue with that story and see how far it takes us. But from us, you have yourselves a good evening, and join us for the first test next Sunday.